use everything that we've learned and reviewed, and we're going to talk about quadrilaterals. Now that might be a name you're familiar with, and it might be something new to you. I typed it right up here so we could see it written out because that is quite a long word, quadrilaterals. You might notice quad, Q-U-A-D right here, and that means four, right? Like four quadruplets, it's 4 kids. Quadrilaterals means 4 sides or 4 angles. So we're going to be talking about shapes that have 4 sides, 4 angles, and 4 vertices. Here I have a quadrilateral. This figure can be named A, B, C, D, but it can't be named A, C, D, B. And that's because points A and C are not endpoints of the same side. Okay, so I have to make sure that when I'm labeling this or when I'm naming this figure, I'm naming it by its sides. So AB is one line, right? BC, CD, DA. So I could do A, B, C, D. I could do A, D, C, B, right? But I have to be making sure that I'm naming it by its sides in order. So when I look at this figure, I notice some light blue tick marks. These tick marks help me to understand that the lines with matching tick marks are the same length. So I don't need to measure them because it's already telling me that that means that they're the same length. So the sides with 1 tick mark each, so line segment BC and AD, those are the same length because they both have 1 tick mark. And then we have line segments AB and DC. Those each have 2 tick marks, which means that those 2 sides are the same length. We're going to take a look at some common quadrilaterals. And we know that all of these quadrilaterals we're looking at are polygons with 4 sides and 4 angles. You'll notice that there's no names attached to these common quadrilaterals. That's because I want you to really think about, what are these shapes? What other names have you heard them called? You can jot down some notes. Again, you can use a Post-it, the back pages of your journal, just a piece of scratch paper, whatever you have available. You could type them on a doc. And I want you to write down some notes about each of these common quadrilaterals. Go ahead and pause the video and then come back when you're ready so we can review our notes. I'm going to be doing the same. Okay, hopefully you got some good notes. Let's take a look at our first shape. It's a trapezoid. You may have guessed that. I bet in your classroom, maybe last year, if not this year, you had some tables that were shaped like trapezoids, so it might be familiar to you. So trapezoids have at least 1 pair of parallel sides. You'll see that I wrote at least. That's because they can have 2 pairs of parallel sides, but it's not required. In order to be a trapezoid, you do need that 1 pair of parallel sides. Let's move on to our next shape. A parallelogram. And a parallelogram, I always remember this shape because I think it's a shape full of parallel lines, right? There's 2 pairs of parallel sides and 2 pairs of sides of equal length. So you'll notice those tick marks that we talked about earlier. And I can see that this side here and this side here are equal because they have 1 tick mark. And then I have my sides on the top and bottom are also equal because those have 2 tick marks. They could have all 4 sides of equal length, right? But in this case, we have 2 pairs of sides of equal length. And a rhombus. All sides are equal length, identified by tick marks. See how all of the tick marks are just 1? That's because that means all 4 of those sides are the same length. And you'll find 2 pairs of parallel sides. Next, I bet this shape is very familiar to you, a rectangle. So there's 2 pairs of parallel sides. There's 2 pairs of sides of equal length, identified by those tick marks again. And then 4 right angles, which are marked by those little squares in the corner, those right corners. So that's identified for us. That tells us that that is a right angle. And a rectangle has 4 right angles. And you'll notice some of these attributes are what distinguish them from each other, right? So you'll see that this rectangle is different than a parallelogram because of the right angles. And we'll get more into that in a bit. And then we have a square, which I know you're all very familiar with. So a square has 2 pairs of parallel sides, all sides of equal length, and 4 right angles marked by those right corners. Okay, now it's your turn to try to identify these. Instead of having you type these on the slide, I'm going to have you just write them down somewhere on a piece of paper because I'm also going to be putting the answers up so we can talk about these a little bit as well. So I gave you a word bank right there, those words in pink. Let's see, can you identify these 4 polygons? Go ahead and write it down somewhere. You can pause the video, take your time, and then you can play when you are done. Here we are. So the first shape is a parallelogram. Okay, there's 2 sides of the same length and 2 pairs of parallel sides. The next shape over here is a trapezoid. I see 1 pair of parallel sides. Then down here, I labeled it quadrilateral. I couldn't get any more specific than that because there's not even 1 set of parallel sides, right? None of these sides are parallel. I don't know if any of them are the same length. That's not identified. So this is simply a quadrilateral, a 4-sided figure. And then my last shape here, I have a rhombus. And I know it's a rhombus because all 4 of those sides are the same length. So I was looking at these and I was thinking back to our lesson on lines, and I noticed that if I look at each of these sides, how they intersect, see that? I can see, like I'm looking at the rhombus, for example, and I have this side intersects with my bottom here. They're not labeled, so I can't call them by their names. Those are intersecting lines. But if I go back to my rectangle or my square, if I look at the sides here, right, I see that those intersect and form a right angle. So those sides actually those sides are actually perpendicular lines, right? They intersect and create right angles. Just wanted to point that out as well.